Good afternoon, Professor Celso Bosques and colleagues. Today we are going to present the topic The Theories of Translation. This work is presented by Lourdes Díaz, Gloria Escudero, Tatiana González Mordoc, Erika Rodríguez, Argelis Torres, and Eliezer Vargas.
Good afternoon, Professor Celso Bosques, colleagues. I'm Argelis Torres, and I have the pleasure to introduce you the topic, the theories of translation. Our main objective with this written work is to set that it's important to create a theoretical frame when we translate. Why is this important? This is important because there are certain principles that govern translation, and we cannot work right if we don't take those principles into account. Due to this, we can say that translation is a process, and it's considered an exact art that does not accept any kind of mistakes when we perform this kind of work.
To begin with the explanation of this topic, the first theory we have included in this work is the scopus. It is important to clarify the term scopus. It is a Greek word that means purpose or intentional purpose. And according to Hans Bermin, who developed the theory by the year 1978, he's explained that the principal objective of a translation is the achievement of the purpose, but not looking for a corresponding meaning of the term or form. So what we have understood about this theory is that the target text must be comprehensible to the reader. Therefore, the client instruction is very important to get a successful translation, because it is not only necessary to know the purpose, but also the situation in which it's going to be used, and also the people who are going to use it.
The typologies of reflection and translation. There are 8 kinds or types of typologies on translation: technical, scientific, financial, legal, judicial, juridical, certified, and literary translation. The first one, which is technical translation, it is addressed to a target and limited audience, and it is also closely related to technical documents. The second one, scientific translation, it deals with documents related to science, articles, conference, presentations, congress, booklets, and so on. Financial, it focuses on banking and finance. Legal translation, it covers legal documents. These are summons and warrants, registration certificates, and technical documents. Judicial translation, it is a translation of any document. For example, birth or marriage certificates, identify documents, sentences, property deeds, and so on. Juridical translation is the translation of laws, regulations, general sales and purchase, legal contracts, license and commercial contracts, partnership agreements. Certified translation, translators use their signature to authenticate official translations. literary translation, which is the last one. It focuses on the semantic content of the original text. It takes into account the author writing style.
Now, we are going to talk about the theory of dynamic equivalence in translation, formal equivalence, and dynamic equivalence.
Next is the dynamic equivalence. According to the principal defender of this theory, Eugene Naida, there are two types of equivalence, the formal and the dynamic. The formal focus attention on the form and the content of the message. So the message in the receptor language must match as closely as possible all the elements of the source language. So the principal attention is given to the source language. It is its grammatical unit, the sense of terms, the lexicon, the paragraph structures, punctuation, and all the other boundaries of the source language. It is translating word into a word, verb into a verb, and so on. On the other hand, the dynamic equivalence gives special attention to the message of the text we want to communicate in its semantic quality. So it requires some adaptations of its grammar, its lexicon, the cultural reference, because the principal interest of the translator is to achieve a complete natural expression comprehensible to the reader. The message is the principal objective of the translator. Normativity refers to the regularities of the general aspects of both the source language and the target language. What is adequate, what is inadequate in certain situations, what is permitted in some dimensions. So if the translation fulfills all the required norms, we can say that it can never be value-free. So norms are the active ingredients of a successful translation.
Translation of the genre. Another type of classification of translation will be genre classification. Translators of prose, poetry, plays have different challenges to translate due to the genre. The technical translator should also observe the stylistic requirements of scientific and technical materials to make the text acceptable to the specialist. There is a great challenge to the translator, who must have a very good command of the technical terms and a sufficient understanding of the subject matter to be able to give an adequate description of the situation.
The contemporary theories on translation. It has, or it is based on 6 different approaches. These are the social-linguistic approach, the communicative approach, the hermeneutic approach, the linguistic approach, literary approach, and semiotic approach. The social-linguistic approach is a theory that states that the translation depends on the translator's environment. Environment and translator are one. So, the result of the translation is based on the combination of both. Communicative approach. It focuses on translation as a meaning, but not as a translation word by word. Now we have the hermeneutic approach. The hermeneutic approach states that communication is a process, translation is a process, and the combination of both, in the combination of both, the result is an exact art that does not admit mistakes. Now we have the linguistic approach. The linguistic approach is based on meaning, equivalence, purpose, analysis, and lecture, but without forgetting important words like semantics, pragmatics, and correspondence because they work as a whole. Then we have the literary approach. The literary approach sets that language is the art of energy. But why is language the art of energy? Because language is in charge of transmitting emotions, hate, love, and sadness. Are those emotions that are able to move a writer to express them through words. Then the responsibility of a good translator is not to translate a document or a text. The responsibility of a good translator is to translate the framework on literature and the emotions that are involved in it. The semiotic approach states that translation interprets text. It studies sign and meaning, so there is a connection between the interpreter, signs, and objects.
The relevance of theory. This is a cognitive approach with some concepts: contextual effect, cognitive environment, descriptive and interpretive use, optimal relevance. It aims to explain the well-recognized fact that communicators usually convey much more information with their utterances than what is contained in their literal sense. The same utterance, in a different context, can generate different interpretations. The prepositional form of an utterance is an interpretation of a mental representation of a speaker, which can be understood as an interpretation of an actual attributed representation, a desirable relevant representation, a description of an actual state of affairs, a desirable state of affairs.
As a conclusion, I'd like to say that translation is not just reproducing the original document or the original text. Translation is more than that. It's to take the essence and meaning from a text in a way that is as accurate as possible. Thank you very much for your attention.